Hello, everyone, and welcome to another weekly roundup. It's currently about 1500 hours Pacific time on the 4th of March, which is about 0100 hours Eastern European time on the 5th of March. If you're new to the show, my name is Darren Brown. This is the California Dream, a podcast where we talk about California and why many of us believe California and the world would be better served if California left the United States. But today, we're not going to talk about California, at least not directly. We're going to talk about the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. And yes, it is Ukraine, not the Ukraine. I've thought a lot about what I should say about this, how to say it, what I should not say. I'm not really looking forward to talking about this, but it has too much geopolitical importance to just ignore it, pretend it's not happening. So first of all, just to be really clear for all the people in the back of the room, Vladimir Putin can go fuck himself. That is really the only appropriate course of action for him at the moment. Now, before I go any further, there's something I need to address. And I would really prefer not to discuss this because I'm probably going to piss off a lot of people. But I just don't see any way of getting around it. It's like the elephant in the room. And if you're outside the United States, or if you're not someone who spends a lot of time observing or interacting with the extremely online left, you might not know what I'm referring to here. So bear with me. What I need to address is the tremendous amount of whataboutism that is prevalent in many spaces on the left right now. What about this? What about that? Apparently, it needs to be said because many people are either unable or unwilling to say it. There is no excuse for what Russia is doing. None whatsoever. What about this? What about that? Stop it. Just stop. You know, there are many reasons I advocate for California's independence from the United States. Healthcare, education, civil rights, basic democratic representation. But one of the most important reasons I do so is because I believe California leaving the United States would start the process of dismantling American imperialism, which carries out an immense amount of destruction and causes an immense amount of suffering throughout the world. The United States is easily the most dangerous threat to world peace. But recognizing the threat posed by America doesn't mean that we should rationalize or turn a blind eye to the behavior of others in the name of anti-imperialism. That's not being an anti-imperialist. That's just being anti-American. Has the United States meddled in Ukrainian politics? Yes, it has. I would remind everyone that Russia has meddled in Ukrainian politics as well. Does Ukraine seek a closer relationship with the West, including aspirations of joining the European Union and NATO? Yes, it does. And has Russia interpreted these aspirations as a security threat? Yes, it has. And here, I think we really need to be careful in our independence movement about our position on these issues because we don't want to set a precedent that can be used against us. For example, we can have very legitimate criticisms of the EU and of NATO in particular, and I do. But if we say that Ukraine must be demilitarized, or that Ukraine must give up its aspirations of joining NATO, because Russia has a perceived security threat and we oppose Western imperialism, then what we are saying is that when a country becomes independent from an empire, that empire might still be entitled to maintain that country under its sphere of influence. This reasoning could very well be used against a future independent California. Imagine maybe 20 or 25 years into the future. The California has achieved independence from the United States, but the U.S. still exists as a much larger country with significant military and nuclear capabilities. Imagine that this future United States is governed by a right-wing authoritarian who has effectively seized control of the country and eliminated democratic institutions. Further, suppose that this authoritarian leader running the United States is resentful of the decline of American imperialism and wants to reintegrate California back into the U.S., or at the very least, bring California back under the sphere of influence of the U.S. And this leader expresses the willingness to use American military and nuclear capabilities to achieve that end. Would California not retain the right, as a sovereign country, to enter into diplomatic agreements and treaties with other countries to protect its interests? You see where I'm going with this. Does Ukraine harbor fascist elements within its borders? Yes, it does. Does Ukraine have fascist political parties? Yes, it does. I would remind everyone that the United States harbors fascist elements within its borders. And one of the two major political parties in the United States, a party that stands poised to take control of both legislative bodies in the upcoming midterm elections, is arguably a neo-fascist party. Is this a legitimate pretext for another country to invade and carpet bomb California? Displace millions of Californians? That's a rhetorical question, by the way. Does Ukraine have fascists and neo-Nazis in its military? Yes, it does. Again, I would remind everyone that every military has fascists and neo-Nazis. And there are reputable sources that estimate that somewhere between 25% and 30% of the United States military are fundamentalist Christian nationalists. In other words, fascists. I'll ask again. Is this a legitimate pretext for another country to invade and carpet bomb California and displace millions of Californians? Finally, does Ukraine have a history of memorializing and erecting monuments to Nazi sympathizers and collaborators? Yes, it does. And once again, I would remind everyone, the United States has, for over 100 years, memorialized and erected monuments to fascist sympathizers and collaborators. They're called Confederate memorials and monuments. They were erected by fascist groups to memorialize fascists. They're all over the southern United States. So I suppose that's also justification for another country to invade and carpet bomb California and displace millions of Californians. Now, having dealt with this issue of whataboutism, let's talk about how we should approach this conflict as Californians. First and foremost, we should be striving for the swiftest resolution of this conflict that minimizes violence and human suffering. I know that is easier said than done, and I am not going to pretend at all that I have answers about how we should get to that resolution. But that should be the goal. Having said that, if the California independence movement is going to gain any acceptance, if it is going to gain any legitimacy among the international community, we must remain true to our core principles. One of those core principles should be adherence to international law. Another should be the integrity of national sovereignty and the right of people to self-determination. And while there might be an authentic discussion that should take place regarding the status of Crimea and the Donbass region, there can be no doubt that Russia's invasion of Ukraine is a violation of international law and an assault on Ukraine's national sovereignty and right of self-determination. It is an assault ordered, incidentally, by one of the leaders of the global right-wing authoritarian fascist movement. That's about all I have to say on this for the moment. I was really looking forward to discussing some economics, sharing some economics videos that I thought might be really informative for everyone. But to be honest, I'm just not up to it right now. I'm just not up to it. So we'll come back to that later. For now, let's pray for the Ukrainian people. Let's pray for the Russian people. Let's pray for everyone suffering due to this needless, senseless conflict between imperial powers. And let's pray for everyone around the world, everywhere, suffering from imperialism. I'll talk to you later.